Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're digging into some really fascinating sources. They point to a kind of hinge moment in history, and it's all defined by one man, really, whose legacy is, well, it's a terrifying paradox.
Exactly. We're focusing on Junius Rusticus today. And his story, it just shows how much of the Western tradition of leadership kind of hung on two tiny actions, like really small things, giving a book to someone and then overseeing one particular trial.
Right. So our mission here is to unpack the life of this figure, Rusticus, born around 100 AD. I mean, this is the guy who meticulously trained Marcus Aurelius, essentially trained him to be the world's first philosopher king. But we need to get into the deeper story, don't we? How Rusticus himself navigated this just brutal collision between philosophical ideals,
hmm
the stoicism he lived by, and the harsh realities, the duties of the Roman state.
And what hits you straight away is the family history, that heavy shadow. Rusticus, he was the grandson of Aurelius Rusticus, a famous senator, very courageous, who actually stood up to the Emperor Domitian, the tyrant,
Mhm.
and was killed for it, murdered for his bravery.
Yeah, exactly. And the sources point out Junius was born less than 10 years after that political execution. So you can imagine the pressure, right? And maybe the temptation to just retreat. One ancient writer even describes him as someone who could have easily been happy just being a mere pen and ink philosopher.
Right. Hiding away in his library, writing theories, staying out of the dangerous game of power politics.
But the sources seem clear that his sense of duty, probably instilled by that family example, it was just too strong. His own philosophy basically demanded active engagement.
hmm There was this understanding, it seems, that if you have talent, you owe it to the state and maybe to yourself to actually contribute, not just sit back with abstract ideas, no matter how nice the quiet life looks.
Okay, so how does this philosopher, this guy tempted by retreat, end up with arguably the most important teaching job in Rome? He starts on the standard path, right? Soldier general.
Yeah, served as consul under Hadrian. He was pretty young then, in his early 30s. And crucially, around this time, he develops a really significant scholarly connection.
Ah, okay. Who was that?
He was connected to Arian, the famous historian and philosopher. Arian had been a direct student of the great Stoic Epictetus, and a lot of scholars today, they strongly suspect Rusticus might have actually sat in on Epictetus's lectures himself.
Wow. Okay, that's critical because that connection, it leads us straight to that first world-changing small event you mentioned, the catalyst moment.
And it couldn't be simpler, really.
Yeah.
Rusticus gives the young Marcus Aurelius a book, his own personal copy of Epictetus's core teachings, the Remembrances, straight from his own library.
A single book, given at the right moment, read by the right person, and it just fundamentally redirects a life. And, well, the course of history, really.
And that act, it cemented their relationship. Rusticus becomes Marcus's official tutor. Marcus was in his early 20s then, and this wasn't just standard schooling. It was deeply transformative. Marcus himself writes about it later in his Meditations. He says he learned things big and small from Rusticus, cosmic stuff and tiny details.
That's the amazing part. We don't have to guess. Marcus actually lists the specific lessons. This is where the philosophy gets really practical, isn't it? He wasn't just teaching big ideas. He was teaching, like, social grace and how to actually be virtuous.
Yeah, there's this huge emphasis on character training, the need for constant self-improvement, self-amendment, dedication, but also warnings. Rusticus told him, don't get sucked into argumentative sophistry.
Meaning?
Basically, don't get trapped in clever-sounding arguments that are actually pointless, the kind that just stroke your ego.
Okay. And he also warned him against posing as a moral athlete, he called it. That tells you everything about Rusticus.
Yeah.
Sincerity over just showing off. Marcus learned to avoid fancy rhetoric, poetry, fine language, and specifically breaches of good taste.
And we know exactly what that meant. The sources are great here. One specific lesson. Don't wander around the house in your formal robes, your consular robes.
Seriously, that's brilliant.
Yeah, it's a lesson against being pretentious, even when no one's watching.
It's those little human details that really stick. Okay, what else? He learned to write letters plainly, without affectation. And Marcus even cites an example. Rusticus's own letter from Sinuessa.
And Rusticus was likely busy with military stuff when he wrote that. So the lesson was real leadership communication is clear, honest, not all dressed up.
And maybe most importantly for a ruler, practical skills. Like how to reconcile with people who've lost their temper, meet them halfway. And also to read really carefully, minute care. Don't just skim the surface of an issue. Demand depth.
Right. Now, the sources, they draw this really interesting parallel here, but also a contrast with Seneca and Nero.
Ah, yeah, the other famous philosopher, tutor, and emperor-student pair.
Exactly. Both Seneca and Rusticus got pulled into serious government work when their students became emperors. Seneca in 55 AD, Rusticus about a century later, 161 AD.
But the outcome was so different.
Totally different. Seneca, for all his brilliance, seems to have, well, compromised his principles sometimes to stay in Nero's favor. Political expediency.
Yeah.
Rusticus, though, he was willing to deliver the hard truths. Marcus actually writes that he was often upset with Rusticus because the criticism could be harsh. But crucially, Marcus says he never regretted getting that feedback.
And that reverence for Marcus is key, isn't it? Especially when you think how close Seneca maybe came with Nero early on before it all went wrong. It just highlights how rare Rusticus's success was. Nero turned out truculent, just waiting to break free. Marcus, completely differently, stayed eager to learn, even after he got supreme power.
Yeah, the sources confirm that deference. Long after becoming emperor, Marcus would greet Rusticus with a kiss, honored him above his own staff. Rusticus somehow managed what so few teachers do. He didn't just fill a mind with facts, he shaped a character fundamentally open to correction, still willing to learn.
Okay, so the philosopher king is on the throne. What happens to Rusticus? He takes on big jobs, right?
Immediately. Second term as consul in 162 AD. And then for 5 years, he holds this incredibly powerful position, urban prefect.
Which was essentially like being the mayor of Rome.
Pretty much, yeah. Overseeing everything. The police, the courts, public works, the grain supply, absolutely vital. A huge position of trust and responsibility, especially given how corrupt Rome could be. And by all accounts, Rusticus served honorably. Did a good job during that time.
But that public duty, that power, it puts him on a collision course, an unavoidable one, it seems, with his own philosophy. And 165 AD, this seemingly minor court case lands on his desk.
Yeah, the trial of Justin Martyr, a famous Christian philosopher. And interestingly, Justin had actually studied Stoicism earlier in his life, but he and 6 students, they were denounced as atheists.
Atheists, because they didn't worship the Roman gods.
Exactly, refusing to acknowledge or sacrifice to the state gods. And the accusation came from a rival philosopher, a cynic named Crescens.
Now, Justin might have reasonably expected maybe some leniency from a Stoic judge. Thinking back, Seneca's brother, Gallio, he'd freed St. Paul a century before in a similar spot. Saw it as an internal religious thing, not a state security issue.
Right, but you have to remember the context here. This wasn't peaceful times in Rome. It was catastrophic, actually. They were deep in a difficult war in Parthia. Germanic tribes were pushing hard on the Danube border. And maybe most importantly, the Antonine Plague was raging, tearing through the empire.
So moments of extreme crisis.
Exactly. And in those moments, authorities like Rusticus, they often clamp down, fall back on strict legal adherence. It's about asserting state control when things feel like they're falling apart.
So Rusticus wasn't just the pen and ink philosopher anymore. He was the top legal and civil authority in the city. His job, as he saw it, was to keep order, protect the peace at all costs. And these Christians, refusing the state religion, the very foundation, supposedly, of Roman peace that looked like dangerous civil disobedience, especially during a plague and wars.
You can feel the tension in the trial record, the acts of Justin. Rusticus starts very directly, asks Justin about his beliefs. Are you a Christian? And Justin says yes, knowing full well what that meant in that moment, how it challenged state power.
And the exchange escalates quickly. Rusticus seems genuinely offended when Justin suggests the Romans hold fast in error. He calls Justin a wretch for saying it, demands to know if Justin approves these doctrines.
Rusticus wanted compliance, you see, not a theological debate. He offered Justin a way out, though. He said, gather round then, and with one accord offer sacrifice to the gods. He was actually extending that chance for reconciliation he'd taught Marcus about.
But Justin refuses, flat out, says, no one who is right-thinking stoops from true worship to false worship. And then that final, chilling moment, Rusticus asks him basically, listen, if you're scourged and beheaded, do you really think you'll go to heaven?
And Justin confirms it, his hope in God's favor.
So, this is the crux, isn't it? Was Rusticus betraying his Stoic ideals here, or just doing his job as magistrate? It's that same choice earlier Stoics faced, like Thrasea or Cato, the pressure to just go along with the state's demand.
Yeah, but now the roles are reversed. The Stoic is the one demanding obedience from the dissenter.
And the power dynamic is completely flipped. He taught Marcus reconciliation, but here, Rusticus seems locked into the black and white legal issue. Justin was refusing the sacrificial laws, civil disobedience, and the law was clear about the penalty, especially when public peace, the pax, felt threatened.
And in being so rigid, so focused on the letter of the law, he missed something, didn't he? He missed the core philosophical alignment, maybe. Justin was choosing death over compromising his beliefs, living a lie, that kind of courage, facing death head on. You'd think that would earn some grudging respect from a deep Stoic like Rusticus.
But Rusticus held the power of the state. And he used it. He issued the order. Let those who have refused to sacrifice and to obey the command of the emperor be scourged and led away to suffer capital punishment according to the law.
And what's really fascinating philosophically is the potential blind spot, that core Stoic idea of sympathia, the idea that we're all connected, part of one big rational whole. It seems like he failed to apply it here. Instead, he saw a threat to public order, a threat to his authority, which, ironically, is the exact same thinking protecting the state from perceived threats that led the Emperor Domitian to kill Rusticus's own grandfather all those years ago.
Wow. Yeah. And the execution itself, Justin Martyr and his students, it was barely noticed at the time, right? Rome was reeling from war, plague.
Just another day, almost. A footnote. But history remembers differently, doesn't it? History remembered that decision, just like it remembered the seemingly unremarkable decision to give a boy a book years earlier. Both had these outsized consequences.
So what happened to Rusticus after this?
Well, in 168 AD, he left his post as urban prefect, and he died within about 2 years. And Marcus Aurelius, even though he was far away, fighting on the frontier, he ordered the Senate to give honors and statues to his old teacher, a monument to a man seen as devoted to duty to character.
But the real monument to Junius Rusticus, the one that maybe outshines even that infamous trial, it's the student he trained, isn't it? He helped craft the most humane leader Rome probably ever had, the Stoic who became king, Marcus Aurelius.
So wrapping this up, what does it all mean for us looking back? Rusticus's life really shows how a leader's commitment to public duty, especially when taken to its absolute legal limit, can just violently clash with their deepest philosophical values. And history ends up defining them as both things at once, a revered mentor and, well, a historical villain in some eyes.
It's the ultimate paradox, truly. He trains Marcus to be ready to reconcile, to meet people halfway. Yet when he's tested himself in that courtroom, Rusticus couldn't bridge that gap. He stuck to the letter of the law, even when faced with someone refusing to compromise their conscience.
Which leaves us, and maybe you the listener, with a really tough question. Rusticus was honored in his own time for his character, his unwavering sense of duty, yet he failed, fundamentally, to respect dissent. Even when that dissent came from a martyr, showing the exact kind of civic courage his own grandfather displayed against tyranny. So the question is, when does duty stop being a virtue and maybe become just an instrument of injustice? Something to think about perhaps next time you face a conflict between the rules and your conscience.